I will say it's so funny. I always call them professional skills or technical skills. I never say soft skills. That's too nebulous. It has too much of a negative context with it. But when you look at those professional skills, I would say just again, going back to that P&L, and if you're looking at that people, how effective is that line item? Is that getting you the results? Do you need results from that line item? Because I guarantee that your business needs people in order to operate. If you took all the people out of it, what would happen to the business?
You don't have a business anymore. It's gone.
You don't have exactly. So how are you looking at that from an aspect of growing, nurturing, maintaining it just as much as you would pay for maintenance, or you would look at it or evaluate the effectiveness of any other your tools or processes?
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Ponto. Each week I bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week I'm excited to connect with Megan Robinson. She is the founder at eLeader Experience and works with individuals and teams to develop self-leadership skills that grow companies. She started her career in marketing, climbing her way through the corporate ladder at advertising agencies and Fortune 500 companies. Like many, she caught the entrepreneur bug and started her own marketing company. After yet another business therapy session, Megan discovered her true passion was in coaching and is a John Maxwell certified coach and disc trainer. In addition, she is the past president of ATD Chicago, the leading learning and development organization in Chicagoland. Inspired by her own successful career in corporate and entrepreneurial environments, Megan makes leadership approachable for everyone, regardless of title, position, or experience. Congrats on eLeader Experience and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you, Karl. I don't think I've ever been congratulated at a beginning of a podcast or something to just celebrate the moment when you start a business. And you deserve some celebration as well, because we both know it is not easy. It is not celebrated enough. And there's a lot of fun at the beginning, but several years in, it is worth reminding yourself, congratulations for doing this.
Yeah, it's one of the things that people get really excited about. They think that it's as easier than it actually is. And there's so much you don't know when you first launch a business. And so the fact that you've been successful with eLeader Experiences is something worth celebrating. And so yeah, I like starting all my podcasts with celebrating my guests and what they've accomplished, because it's really important that people that are following their footsteps understand what the lessons they can provide and the wisdom. And I think it's really valuable what we're going to be talking about today, which is things you work on with your clients, which is about the real work of leadership that no one trains leaders for. I think I'm curious as what exactly those are from your opinion, because I know from my experience doing the show and just seeing the state of business leadership in the world, it seems like there's a lot of like MBA programs that prepare you to be an executive and execute tasks and systems and processes, but they don't teach you how to lead people. And so my suspicion is that there's some of that overlap in the sort of things you think that the leaders are missing. But I'd love to hear more about what is the real work of leadership that no one trains you for.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there, where MBA programs or school, and I will say they train you how to be a manager. They train you on processes, on systems, on KPIs, on what to look for, on technical acumen, frankly. But when it comes to that leadership versus management dichotomy, right, that push-pull, it is very rarely the management activities or behaviors that are going to make you a great executive. And they are definitely not going to make you a great leader. And I think of managing process and leading people. And I'm actually a big believer that you can't train leadership the same way you can train management. There are no I's to dot, T's to cross, or what I call checkbox leadership. Oh, I've done all the things. Now I must be a great leader. Doesn't really work, right? Even smirk at that. Yeah, no, I can't say, well, I asked you what motivates you, so let's check that box off and move on. Right? You have to do it with empathy. You have to do it with curiosity. You have to be agile and flexible and meeting people where they're at. And all of that are the people skills that are critical to success, are underdeveloped, And they're all the expectations we have for leaders that are never explicit, that are never explained to us, that are never told to us. And so we keep walking around acting like managers and hoping that we're going to be good leaders.
Yeah, I like that example of the checkbox leadership thing where it is, even though it's the same quote unquote action, people can tell when you are just checking a box and going through the motions versus actually caring about them, because there's so much of the body language or the tone of voice or just the way how much time you spend listening to the answer, whether you listen at all, or if it's just I said the question and they heard it, so it must be enough. And and then you mentioned about those muscles have atrophied in a lot of people that are in the manager or executive roles. And what I think is also interesting about and kind of improving these skills in the people in existing like executive roles or manager roles is with the AI tools that are out there now. Those are really good at the strategic and the tasks and all the things that executives are doing. And so if they don't want to be replaced or kind of downsized because the strategic side of things is done by AI faster or better, then what's left is the leadership skills and the human side of things and the relationship building. And those are the skills that they're underdeveloped and haven't learned how to use. So it seems like should be a sense of urgency for a lot of people in those roles to improve those skill sets, because otherwise what value they're really bringing if there's an AI tool that can do the business strategy and the checking the boxes for tasks, that sort of stuff.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny you say that because I just wrote a blog about what are those 7 critical leadership skills that AI can't replace. And you're right, they are all not necessarily strategic, and they are much more relational. And it's not a matter of how much can you do or the work product, it's how can you get people to work with you or work under you, or how can you pull out the best from them, or how can you get them to adopt what needs to happen? How do you actually get the work done? And it's so funny because so much of this is the soft, squishy skills that are hard to measure, hard to manage, hard to prove an ROI. But I was just chatting, we're not in a world where robots do everything and you have to manage robots. It turns out you still have to work with the people to get the work done. And I was chatting with a colleague just the other day about retention and just the retention and engagement deficit that's in our organizations. That's the biggest challenge. And it always, any sort of those people problems that you're having, any sort of the people, I'll even say the bottom line on the P&L, your labor is a huge number. And when you aren't having the leadership to support it or develop it or to make that number be more effective, you're missing out. You're missing out in such a big way that AI will not be a saving grace for you. It can definitely cover yourself and it can be a helpful thought partner, but it is not going to take that away or improve it.
Yeah, the so-called squishy or soft skills that have been downplayed or undervalued by people in executive or manager roles are now quickly being realized as the difference makers and the change makers. And also, and I was actually at a conversation with someone yesterday who's going to be on the show, and she had one of the most elegant ways of reframing the importance of investing in and supporting employees from a managerial or a strategic perspective, which is if you need your employees to be able to make like high level, accurate decisions under stress. And if they're constantly are like overworked or overstressed because of they're not supported in the right ways, then their brains physically can't, they're in fight or flight mode. They physically can't make higher level cognitive decision making under pressure because they're in a fight or flight mode. So they're going to make bad decisions, which is going to hurt your business. So if you want people to have the capacity to show up the way you need them to, then you have to support them and use those soft skills to build real relationships and create that psychological safety and all the soft language that people discount or downplay as not important or not like valuable for the business, or things they can cut in the name of efficiency or cost cutting and stuff, but it's all those things that enable your employees to show up and deliver and make the decisions and move the business forward in a way that you can track. And so it's one of those things that as she said, I was like, oh my God, that's such a great way of reframing it, because it puts it in terms of what the group that kind of has been underplaying or undervaluing these sort of skills for a long time, it can appreciate. And so I think it's worth repeating. And so I did.
Thank you. I will say it's so funny. I always call them professional skills, or professional skills or technical skills. I never say soft skills. That's too nebulous. It has too much of a negative context with it. But when you look at those professional skills, I would say, just again, going back to that P&L, and if you're looking at that people, how effective is that line item? Is that getting you the results? Do you need results from that line item? Because I guarantee that your business needs people in order to operate. If you took all the people out of it, what would happen to the business?
You don't have a business anymore. It's gone.
You don't have exactly. So how are you looking at that from an aspect of growing, nurturing, maintaining it just as much as you would pay for maintenance, or you would look at or evaluate the effectiveness of any other your tools or processes? And I'll say, when it comes to leadership, we'll specifically say managers and above who are responsible for those output of those people, and making sure that they don't just have the KPIs and the numbers, but that they're actually pulling people in and getting the best out of them, because that's what we're talking about here. So when it comes to that work of leadership that no one's training you for, it is, to your point, the relationship building. It's providing clarity. It's being agile or flexible in your communication. It's how do you support people? How do you develop them? How do you give them the feedback that motivates and inspires instead of demotivates or makes them want to leave? How are you keeping up your retention numbers? Because I guarantee people don't leave jobs because of the organization. They leave it because of their manager. And if you're not inspiring that, if you are not keeping that, if you are not maintaining that number, and there is a revolving cost door because of it. I just talked to actually another manager a couple of days ago who left their job specifically because of their supervisor. And it was a conversation of, who's really suffering is the organization, because that supervisor's still in the role. They're still being toxic. And your talent and the people that want to change things, and the people that made measurably better results for the organization, literally had VPs talking to her and saying, you know what, I don't worry about this department or team anymore, because you have changed all of the challenges, all of the concerns, all of the issues that used to get raised to me are no longer there. That is visible work. That is time that's taken out of it. I always get leaders in the organization saying, you know what, I just want my managers or directors to act like managers. It's because they keep dealing with issues and they keep pushing those issues that they should be navigating up and up and up until it impacts the strategic ability and strategic bandwidth for that executive team.
Yeah, I think it ties into another big problem, which is just the way companies promote people is they don't really train the managers on how to lead. They go, oh, you're great at doing the work, so you should be great at leading the people doing the work. It's like, no, that's a completely different skill set. Again, it's the technical skills versus the professional skills, and they're not supported, and so they're not able to support their teams, and it just becomes a very that toxic experience, because they're often enjoyed being good at doing the work, and they don't really enjoy the people side of things because they don't really know how to do it, and so it's frustrating and hard, and there's this vicious cycle that leads to the dysfunction you just mentioned about the people leaving, because now the person they're working, their direct report is insufferable to work with for various reasons. And then it comes down to not realizing the importance of those professional skills and supporting and investing in their employees. Because I think there's this myth that people have, if I invest in them and they get better, they're going to get a better offer from someone else and they're going to leave. But it's, if you invest in the right people and you show them that you care about them and want them to succeed, they're going to feel like they're in a great spot because they're with people that actually care and invest in them. So they're not going to run away the first chance they get. They're going to want to stay and support the company that supported them, versus if you ignore them and make the experience awful, then they're going to leave no hesitation because they're not getting the support. So there's so many of these weird myths that I think all come down from that lack of professional skills and relationship building that the executive teams just don't really understand how the human part of the business works and how human behavior works in these relationships are not costs, or not extras. They're the glue that holds the company together.
Well, I will say that investment will happen one way or another, because you will invest in that person and that manager. And we do a lot of work with that first-time manager, those transitions, because they're tough transitions. They're very confusing. No one's explaining it. Definitely no one's developing them or nurturing them through it. But if you don't, I will say, do the proactive part of it, you're either going to have one of two things happen. And I'm not saying they're not going to get there. I'm going to say the road to getting there and to being effective is much longer. And here's the cost that you're going to pay for it: is you're going to pay for it in the turnover of their teams. You're going to lose not just the employees, you're going to see the productivity drop in it. They're going to need more people to do the same work. They're going to have people leaving. The institutional knowledge will be gone. The client relationships will suffer because of that. And I think it's about over 50% of first-time managers are not in that role in the first 2 years. That person that you promoted is actually not going to stick around, because you're going to get frustrated, because they weren't doing what they needed to do, because they weren't able to make that leap on their own. And they're going to go take that lesson, that your investment, and bring it to the other company that they're going to work at, because that was what you invested in them. And which really sucks, because you made the promotion and now you lost someone that was so good at their job, that was so productive. So you've just hit that double whammy. So I guarantee that investment in those people, whether it's through a conscious development and something that is intentional or unintentional, let's see what happens. Let's see how they struggle. This is the way that I had to go through it approach. You will be making that investment one way or another.
Yeah.
Even those, if you do it intentionally, that investment might be time. It will be time from the senior leaders and supervisors that need to support them, or it'll be in something indirect or outside that, but there will be that investment one side.
And then if they go in the way that leads to the people leaving or the new manager leaving, then you also get to enjoy the surcharge of replacing them and all the cost and the loss of productivity on top of that. And then the erosion of culture and all the people around them that see what happened, and there's just the lack of trust, and people maybe not leaving, but again, they're not as productive as they could be, because they see, oh, if I do really good job, I'm gonna get promoted to this thing, and they're not supported, and I'm gonna hit it, and I'm gonna leave. It's like they're not gonna want to get promoted. They're not going to try hard to stand out. They're just going to do as little as they can to not get fired. But it's this, what we're seeing in so many teams right now is just the result of this repeated process of not supporting the employees as human beings, and not developing the professional skills of the executives and managers.
Well, and I think what's interesting, for going back to just the topic of this, is the real work of leadership. And this is where you see a lot of discomfort for people as well, where they feel that the work they're doing as leaders isn't really work, because that's not measured in the same way that individual contributor work is measured. You don't say, well, you know what, I had 50 one-on-ones. And you say, wow, that was great. And this is what the direct result of that was. Sometimes you can do that, but measuring that type of work or defining that as real work isn't always there. Sometimes it's a mindset. It's definitely a shift for people to understand how they're doing it and to be intentional with what that work looks like. Sometimes it's not even additional hours, I'll say. It's the work of how you approach something, how you prepare for the meeting, how you get to know someone. What are you doing beyond that that makes that relationship work? Because I will guarantee anyone that is in a marriage knows that the relationship takes work. It takes energy, it takes effort, and that is labor that happens whether you are producing something specific for an organization and what that end result looks like.
Yeah, I think the overall fascination with dashboards and metrics and trying to quantify everything has blinded people to the fact that the professional skills, those sort of things, despite not having easy numbers attached to them, are what is the underlying foundation that allows for all the other number related stuff to actually work.
Well, and I'd be almost fascinated to look at any one of those dashboards or any one of those KPIs that you have, or key performance indicators, sorry, and say, great, this is what it is. Can we look at this from a technical and from a professional or a relational aspect and say, what are we doing from both sides of this equation to make sure that that number works? Because you're only using one tool for it. Doesn't even mean that your KPIs are wrong. It just means how you're diagnosing them and how you're evaluating their success. That may be where the challenge is.
Love that. Well, something to think about for next time. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Megan. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please leave a subscription, or leave a comment and subscribe. If you'd like to learn more about myself or Megan, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.